all, and welcome back to the Pipe Cottage. I just got back from New Orleans, had a very good time, and stopped off at, well, let me show you this before I take the lid off. Stopped off at the Briary, picked up a new blend from them entitled Ephemeris. But this is a blend that they've had out for a year or two now, but this is Ephemeris with Perique. So there's a great deal of Perique in it. When I first smelled it, it smelled like Latakia. But no, it is Perique. And what's special about this blend is that it has, Sutcliffe Perique in it, which you can't buy anymore. It's out of production. Picked up this GBD pipe while I was there, which is probably from the 70s, I'd say, in their estate collection. I love these old GBD pipes, and so I'm going to take a little tobacco, put it in the pipe, and you've got to really be, I wish I could get it up there where I could, let you see the way I pack the bowl, but essentially I do the 3-pinch method. Put the tobacco in a little loose and then a little bit tighter the next time, and then you put it in even more tight the final time. But anyway, I'm not here to teach you how to pack a pipe right now. I just want to have a little something in my mouth, have a little tobacco going here as we prepare our discussion. This is a glorious blend. What I like about it is it's got probably 3 different kind of Virginias. Stowed Virginia, got some excellent red Virginia in here. And then, of course, that St. James Parish Perique. The mouthfeel, you can just fill your mouth with this beautiful taste. Let me go one more time. Hang on there, hang on. We'll get to it in a minute. Oh, that's good. Now, went to New Orleans. Man, I went down there for a conference, but I didn't go to the conference very much. I went to a couple of talks, but when I got to New Orleans, I said, no, I cannot sit in a hotel ballroom and listen to lectures while I am in New Orleans, Louisiana. The people who do conferences need to do them out in the middle of the woods or something, or they need to do them in a location where it's not a culture hub that's going to detract, going to take people's attention away from the conference at hand. So I got there, never been to New Orleans in my whole life. It didn't take me long to realize that I was in a very serious cultural hub, a cultural center when it comes to the American South. And what I so regret is that I didn't go there before. Anything you can imagine, and I'm not a city guy, but if I was, I would want to be in New Orleans or Charleston. I've known Charleston, South Carolina all my life. I think it's very important when it comes to Southern history. Charleston controlled the mind of South Carolina during the antebellum period, and for a good while in Southern history, South Carolina controlled the mind of the South. But New Orleans is something entirely different. Whereas Charleston is very much English in its history and largely Protestant, Anglican, some Presbyterians, you know. New Orleans is overwhelmingly Catholic and very much French and very much Spanish. The architecture is different, the feel is different, but still at the same time, it is extremely Southern. I just posted an article on Substack earlier this week arguing that New Orleans may in fact be the most Southern place on earth. Jim Cobb, a historian at the University of Georgia several years ago, wrote a book entitled The Most Southern Place on Earth, and it was a history of the Mississippi Delta. Well, the Mississippi Delta certainly has its charms, I'm sure, but New Orleans cannot be beat. At this point in my life, I haven't been back to Charleston in several years, particularly since the city tried to sweep its history under the rug after the Dylan Roof shooting, I think in 2015. The city has been trying to actively sweep its history under the rug. And so what you get when you get to Charleston, for the most part, over the past 10 years at least, is a superficial Southern identity. It's very superficial. It doesn't go deep enough. And perhaps one day that will change. But they removed the Calhoun Monument from Marion Square, the most beautiful monument in the city. It's entirely gone now. But when I got to to New Orleans, I saw monuments everywhere. Just beautiful monuments to not only the southern aspect of New Orleans, but the international aspect of it, the French influence. And so I get to New Orleans and I immediately go to the French Quarter. I go to the Garden District. I, of course, visit the museum at the Confederate Memorial Hall, which has the second largest collection of Confederate memorabilia in the United States. I'm guessing that the largest is the former Museum of the Confederacy, which used to be in Richmond, right next to the White House. But it's been dispersed over the past several years. But what I saw in New Orleans was something special. The sounds, the taste, all the senses are just on overload. The smell of the marsh, the bayou, the smell of the food, the sound of a Mississippi riverboat in the background. One of, I think, only 2 truly steam-powered Mississippi riverboats that remain anymore. And so you're here in the Old South. You're seeing it all around you. You're listening to the glorious sounds of live jazz music. Golly. And I went to Preservation Hall one evening. They had the big banquet at this conference I was at. Had a big banquet there. And I said, this is the last night I'm going to be in New Orleans. I'm not interested in going to a hotel ballroom and sitting down for a hotel banquet. I'm going to Preservation Hall. And so I did, and it was glorious. I had front row seats at Preservation Hall to hear their house jazz band. I have been infatuated with jazz music probably since my early 20s. I wasn't raised around jazz music, wasn't exposed to it a lot. But there's a lot of similarities between jazz and bluegrass. Lots and lots of similarities. Banjo picking. I saw banjo players on the streets of New Orleans. Of course, they were playing the old Dixieland style, strumming it, not Scruggs style with the finger pick. But the sound of jazz just it has to be the most southern sound that you can find. Bluegrass doesn't strike me as necessarily southern in origin or southern in the way it sounds. It's more Appalachian, which is not deep south. It's not lower south. But the jazz music that I heard, so you had the jazz coupled with the plethora, the vast amount of restaurants that you can enjoy, the good bookstores. I bought probably more books than I probably should have, but how can you have too many books? That's like having too much fun. It just doesn't exist. Yeah, that's the, so here I am walking in New Orleans. I have bookstores I can go see, cigar shops, tobacco shops. Walked into one cigar shop, the Cigar Factory, and if y'all know anything about New Orleans, you know what I'm talking about. I walk in and they're rolling the cigars in-house. And I thought to myself, there is no way these cigars have to be they're not going to be any good. They haven't been aged. So they're rolling them, and I'm sure that the ones in the humidor have been aged, but they're rolling them. And I said, all right, I'll try one of your cigars. So I got a Maduro wrapped cigar, and oh golly, I sat there for about an hour, just enjoying the scenery, enjoying the sounds of the city, enjoying that cigar. It was mighty, mighty fine. I've been to other southern cities repeatedly, but I've never seen anything that can compare to New Orleans. I remember in 2005, when Katrina hit, most of the people who I knew around South Carolina were not very much interested in the preservation of New Orleans. They were very much concerned with the loss of life. But there was this general attitude among people who I knew at the time, 20 years ago now. This month actually is the 20th anniversary of Katrina. The people who I knew at the time, they thought, well, New Orleans is Sin City, so this is probably God's judgment. I thought, even at the time, I thought that was a primitive response. But what I saw in New Orleans was culture at the highest level that I've ever seen it in the American South. Very high amounts of culture, local culture. The sense of place is just phenomenal. I did not sense that people in New Orleans who have a history in New Orleans are very much cosmopolitan. They do not consider themselves to be citizens of the world. They consider themselves to be citizens of New Orleans. And that means something to these people. It means something. Being from New Orleans means more to the people who I met when I visited than most other people that I've encountered in urban areas in the South over the past 10, 15 years. Because a sense of place, we usually associate that with rural areas, you know, a farm or a piece of landscape. But no, these people in New Orleans were very much proud to be from New Orleans. So I don't know if this book is on your radar, whether you've ever encountered it before, but this is Harnett Kane's Queen, New Orleans, City by the River, published 1949. I want to share with you a couple of quotes from this first chapter. New Orleans is a Lady is the title of the first chapter. Just a couple of lines from this first chapter here. Over many generations, America has looked on New Orleans as a place outside, hardly of its own kind. In a way, New Orleans is proud of that reputation, though she really doesn't care a great deal. At any early date, she acquired tolerance, and she has been growing more tolerant ever since. To her, a shrug appears better than a frown, taking things quietly preferable to losing her temper. There aren't many things, she says, that justify a fit of indigestion. For many decades, people have come here to laugh and sigh, to be scornful and or envious. The Puritan has termed it a hell spot, dripping with scarlet wickedness. To this, the Orleanian would retort that life is meant to be lived, and that he cannot find it in himself to blame human beings for being, well, human. Yet only the most furious of blue noses would call it a city without a conscience. For it is a place of countless churches and of faith continuously demonstrated. And none could term it placid, a scene to be painted in pastel shades. Past and present, it has seen unending struggle between man and between man and nature. And that's how I saw it. There is this raw, unadulterated South in the city of New Orleans. And quite frankly, I fell in love with it. I was not wanting to leave. And I'm eager to go back. Because it is, in fact, in my mind, the most southern place that I have ever seen. It's not perfect. Just like the rest of the South. It's not perfect. There's violence, there's crime, there's heartache. There's some nasty elements to the city. But there's also a deep culture, a sense of the eternal, a sense of true joy and happiness, and not necessarily presentist in the sense that people in New Orleans only live for the moment, but a sense of being in the present with a full knowledge of where you come from, this responsibility to those who come before you, really historical consciousness. And so I was very, very much impressed with New Orleans, and I'm taking my family back in November. I'm going to Natchez, Mississippi to speak at the inaugural Cornbread Catholic Conference in Natchez, Mississippi. So we're going to leave from there, and we're going to go to New Orleans for a few days. But a couple of other books I wanted to point out to you before we sign off. We just started our Pike Cottage Book Club today. I just recorded the first lecture, about 45 minutes long. And so it's still not too late to be involved with that if you want to. Today we were talking about Pope Leo XIII's Rerum Novarum, his encyclical about Catholic agrarianism. And we're going to be reading Chesterton and Belloc in the coming weeks, and we're going to move on to the Southern agrarians. So we've got a lot we're going to be doing. After this weekend, I don't want to take any new members. So if you're interested in the second session of the book club, let's get you in there before the end of this weekend. So by the end of August 3rd or 4th, because today, at the time of this recording, is the 1st. Another book I want to tell you about is On Southern Matters by Marion Montgomery. Now, I knew Marion Montgomery a little bit, talked to him a couple times. I want to share with you, if you're interested in Southern things at all, you really need to get a copy of this book. The foreword is by Eugene Genovese, who was a Catholic historian of the American South. So this is Marion Montgomery. What follows from the agrarian recovery of this ancient ground is a conviction that man as maker, whether of poems or of nature civilized as in crops or nature reconstituted as in machines, participates in a continuing and much larger action of creation. This is what culture is supposed to be. Whether it's rural culture or some type of urban culture, it has to be a participation in a created order. So this is Montgomery. He does so as long as he realizes that his concert of being, his tribute of making, must be in harmony with the larger action of creation. The mystery of man's having been created in the image of God is ancient ground indeed, though perhaps no older than the recognition of a music of being, of all creation's tribute to its source. So Montgomery talks here about the fact that we are living in a continuously decaying Eden. A continuously decaying Eden. And culture matters for many reasons, but one of the main points that Montgomery elaborates on is that culture can only matter if it's a reflection of the good life, the permanent things, creation, and in fact the Creator himself. And so even though I've spent most of my life speaking about rural culture, the rural way of life, what I saw in New Orleans was a way to have an urban culture that is not separated from the landscape. It's actually vernacular. It plays into the landscape. It draws its inspiration from the landscape itself, from the surrounding ground. there's so much going through my mind right now. I just can't explain it all right now, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful when you realize that there are cultured places to go, cultured places to visit. We don't create very much good and worthwhile culture in America anymore. You have to go back in time to find a place in a time period where people were not separated from the land. They didn't live a rootless existence. And in some strange way, cities like Charleston and Savannah and New Orleans, they have a very rooted existence in the same manner that a person might have if they and their family have lived on a farm for several generations. I don't know, there's a lot to unpack there. Another book I want to bring to your attention is Christ in His Fullness, which is written by Deacon Bruce Sullivan from Glasgow, Kentucky. Oftentimes people want to know what kind of books I read when I was going through my conversion to the Catholic Church. This one is just as important as any that I read. And I'm somewhat a little biased because Deacon Bruce is the godfather of our children. He was our sponsor when we came into the church. But he's got blurbs from several important people on the back of this book, and you can find it on Amazon. EWTN, I think, is printing it now. Carl Keating, who was once the president of Catholic Answers, said this: "There are 100 reasons for not being Catholic. Not one of them is compelling. There are equally many reasons for becoming Catholic. Many of them are compelling, but one stands out above the others: the issue of authority. To accept Christ is to accept His church as He established it and as He endowed it with His own authority. The fullness of the Christian faith can be had only in obedience to Christ's authority and therefore to the authority of His church." This is a hard saying for many, but it is a hard saying that liberates from the straitjacket of private interpretation and self-made religion. That's Carl Keating, president of Catholic Answers. I think he was also a founder, if not the founder, writing about Deacon Bruce Sullivan's book, Christ in His Fullness. So I've given you a lot to chew on. We've talked about New Orleans. We've talked about the Briary. We've talked a little bit about Mary Montgomery and Southern Agrarianism. I think that's enough. I got other things I need to go do. But I'm glad you stopped by. This is Alan Harrelson with the Pipe Cottage. Thank you for stopping by.